This is not an India-Pakistan war. This is a one-sided invasion, a war of opportunity. The ruling elite of New Delhi dragged the Indian people to a new conflict with Pakistan beyond Kashmir, turning a limited dispute into a universal enmity. India's role in the 1971 war remains a stain on New Delhi's international ambitions. The war demonstrated India's penchant to create and generate conflicts and the inability of Indian leaders to resolve conflicts with neighbors.
One of the pleas that India has been taking and one of the myths that it has created, that the Pakistan Air Force carried out a preemptive strike on the 3rd of December, and thus Pakistan was the aggressor and India retaliated in response to the airstrike by Pakistan. But the fact is that on the 16th of November, Indian forces had blatantly crossed the international boundaries into East Pakistan and had launched a full-fledged war.
New Delhi's ruling elite led India to a new conflict with Pakistan beyond Kashmir. Exploiting chaos on the streets after a messy Pakistani election, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi jumped on the opportunity to invade and occupy East Pakistan. It was nothing heroic. Islamabad was not at war with India. Pakistan was busy in internal politics, with limited troops on the ground in East Pakistan. Pakistan was in a peacetime military posture in its eastern wing. The borders with India were peaceful. Pakistan did not dispatch additional troops, and there was no hostile intention toward India.
In fact, I would say that it was perhaps a failure on our part, that we should have taken action and we should have opened the front in West Pakistan, but we dilly-dallied and somehow the initiative was taken by the air chief on the 3rd December, but India definitely did. And of course, there are many other reasons why it did it on 16th of November. If you want, I'll share it with you, because it goes to say that the Indians were actually very keen to launch an operation right in April, after the 25th March action of the Pakistan Army, to wrest back the control of East Pakistan, which had actually broken away. But the fact is that Sam Manekshaw, who was the commander-in-chief of the Indian forces, informed Indira Gandhi. In fact, he was called into the parliament and he said it very clearly that the forces are not ready. They need another 6 months to prepare. And also he gave the plea that onwards the monsoon season will come in and the Indian tanks will bog down, so the best time to attack would be November. And that is exactly what they did, which was a blatant aggression against the sovereignty of Pakistan.
But India had other plans. By expanding the war beyond Kashmir, India's message was clear. New Delhi does not see its conflict with Pakistan limited to Kashmir. India will seize every opportunity to hurt Pakistan, a neighbor 5 times smaller.
India was, plotting, planning, machinating and intriguing. And it carried out a complete operation by virtue of which it wanted, you must go back into the pre-1947 psyche of the Indians. They never wanted the, independence of Pakistan. They did not want the division of what they call Mother India. People like Savarkar and so on, even Gandhi, they were averse to the fact that India should be divided. And the Brahmins, they considered it Mother India and its division as a desecration of their motherland.
India imposed a war on Pakistan in 1971 at a theater far away from Kashmir, surprising the Pakistanis. This was a major rupture in Pak-Indian ties. 1971 was a watershed. India basically conveyed to Pakistan that war and enmity is now universal and not limited to Kashmir. India's ruling establishment basically decided in 1971 to push Indians and Pakistanis into permanent enmity. After all, Kashmir was a dispute that could be resolved, but invading a Pakistani territory by stealth and dismembering it, this was akin to taking the conflict to a new level, and that's exactly what happened.
They had been plotting and planning, and it was envisaged that within a year or two, Pakistan will be so subjugated and so subdued by India that it will itself, put down its knees and beg the Indian government to be retaken into the fold of a united India. Alhamdulillah, that did not happen.
On the morning of December 16, 2017, commanders of India's Navy's Eastern Command laid a floral wreath at a war memorial to members of the Indian Armed Forces who perished in the war against Pakistan in 1971. They were marking a war anniversary known as Vijay Diwas in Hindi. At 11:16 a.m., Prime Minister Narendra Modi tweeted a special message. He saluted the Indian soldiers who fought in 1971 and said they protected our nation diligently. But there's one problem in this. India was not under attack in 1971. Pakistan did not launch any war, and the Indian nation faced no threat from any country that year. So what was the war about? The fact is, India was in a war. Pakistan was not. And the truth is, India launched a war of opportunity. This is a war by choice, a war of aggression.
East Pakistan, which was divided by a territory which is hostile because it was India which was in between East Pakistan and West Pakistan, 1,000 miles, which in kilometers is 1,400 kilometers. And India made sure that the Pakistanis or the Pakistani armed forces are stranded over there.
India in 1971 violated international law by launching an unprovoked invasion of East Pakistan using an ISIS-style terror militia it trained with help from Soviet Union. This was a war of opportunity, not necessity. Thousands of Pakistani civilians died in the 1971 war, massacred by the Indian-trained militia. The Indian casualties were minimal because Indian army was the aggressor, invading East Pakistan with the help of a proxy militia it trained. This is why India's Vijay Diwas, building a war memorial and pretending the Indian army was protecting the nation, is an elaborate charade. Prime Minister Modi's tweet suggesting the Indian army was in a defensive posture protecting the nation is tantamount to deliberate distortion of history. Calling out this lie is important.
Now, the operation which started did not start militarily. It was what in these days we use the term hybrid warfare. It was started 50 years ago by the Indians, by the followers of Chanakya. They had exploited the fault line.
While the Indian nation enjoyed peace, Pakistan was under attack for much of the year in 1971. India launched a unilateral war of aggression. Its planning started at least 3 years earlier. An ISIS-style terror militia was created and trained by Indian government and army to seize East Pakistan villages, commit atrocities, and start a flash ethnic conflict to break away Pakistani territory.
Now, please remember one thing, that the Muslim League was formed in the streets of Dhaka. It was the Bengali leaders who were actually the stalwarts and the front runners of the Pakistan movement. Nawab Sir Salimullah and Fazlul Haq, who presented the Lahore Resolution on 23rd March 1940, which came to be known as the Pakistan Resolution. And so many other leaders like Hussain Shahid Suharwardi, and these were all Bengalis. So the question arises, how could a group of people who had actually envisaged and fought and sacrificed for the freedom of Pakistan be led away? But that is exactly what India did. Through its machinations, it created fault lines, it exploited. Of course, there are, you see, even in a single family, there are problems sometimes in siblings, there are rivalries, there are jealousies. But they are resolved through peaceful means. And we could have perhaps done that. Hindsight says that perhaps we, the people who were from West Pakistan, were also at fault. But it was actually exploited to such an extent that a nation which was bona fide Pakistani, which was, you see, a lover of Pakistan, was turned and forced to seek freedom.
Members of this Indian proxy terror militia were flown to the Soviet Union to receive training in guerrilla warfare at multiple locations, including Tashkent, now the capital of Uzbekistan. Former KGB agent and defector Yuri Zemenov gave a detailed account of how India and the USSR planned the 1971 invasion of East Pakistan. The tweet on Vijay Diwas by the Indian Prime Minister and the series of statements he made on this war since 2015 create the basis for a possible Pakistani legal case against the government of India that could help set the record straight on this war. Pakistan can demand an official apology from the Indian government for the devastation its actions caused. Pakistan can also request New Delhi to stop using the events of 1971 to perpetuate a lie. India has misled its people and the world for a long time on what happened in 1971.
And now I visit Bangladesh and I meet some of my old friends, especially those who were in the Pakistan Air Force and others, and some of the friends of my father who was a professor in Dhaka University who are still alive. Believe me, they say that we never wanted a separation. It was forced upon us, and I don't know why we committed this folly. These are the words of these people. So obviously, India machinated in every way possible and achieved its heinous agenda because we were caught surrounded by the enemy, and as well as its propaganda and its hybrid warfare and every type of treachery and trickery which the followers of Chanakya could think up and drum into.
Prime Minister Modi should blame himself for reviving this debate. He has single-handedly weakened India's case on this war. Modi inadvertently revived the debate on India's role in the war during a visit to Dhaka in June 2015, where the Indian Prime Minister admitted that rebels who fought Pakistan and committed massacres were actually undercover Indian soldiers. This was a remarkable confession because, for 4 decades, India insisted indigenous rebels led the war in 1971 and that India intervened only to help them on humanitarian grounds.
First of all, I'll call it with due apology to my friends in the special branches or in the intelligence setup. It was an intelligence failure. Although it was an ISI officer, a young lieutenant colonel, who first detected the Agartala conspiracy, and when he detected it, his life was attempted upon. He managed to save himself, fought bravely. But otherwise, we should have foreseen what India is planning, and we should have taken action, and we should have taken retaliatory action. Number 2, you see, I mentioned that 1,000 miles or 1,400 kilometers of hostile territory was in between India and Pakistan. And India went to the extent of even orchestrating the hijack of its own derelict Fokker aircraft, which was named Ganga, and made to fly to Lahore. It was set on fire, and this was used as a pretext to stop the logistic flow of army and equipment from west to east Pakistan. You see, in 1952, K.M. Panika, who happens to be an Indian naval strategist, in his book India and the Indian Ocean, he had mentioned, and mind you, the enemy is saying this, that Pakistan is going to have 2 navies, one for the protection of East Pakistan and one for the protection of West Pakistan. But the rulers here, they ignored what the enemy was professing. I wish we had followed it. In fact, I'm sorry to say that Field Marshal Ayub Khan, who was the president of Pakistan, was a landlubber. There was a stage when he even wanted to disband Pakistan Navy. He thought we don't need a navy. So if we had had 2 navies, we would have never been blockaded, and we would have made sure that the India doesn't achieve its heinous agenda.
Indian author Sharmila Bose, in her 2011 book, Dead Reckoning, Memories of the 1971 Bangladesh War, provides a lot of context on how India distorted the history surrounding its role in the war.
The last few hours of Radio Pakistan Khulna, it was because I was the only broadcaster for both Urdu and English, Urdu and Bengali announcements in broadcast. And I was keeping the radio station alive because it was closed for a few days before that. So it was not very demanding. Anything and everything which I could find, I was putting it on air. And when I was not able to find anything suitable, I used to relay Radio Pakistan Karachi or Radio Pakistan Rawalpindi, whichever was available at that time. In Urdu broadcast from Rawalpindi, Jammu Niwaz or whatever, just to say that this is Radio Pakistan and the voice comes from Khulna station. So I used to stop these relays just to say, ये रेडियो पाकिस्तान खुलना है और आप इस वक्त रेडियो पाकिस्तान रावलपिंडी की नशियात सुन रहे हैं, and then put it back again. Most popular those days was a broadcast from Radio Pakistan Karachi. Talat Hussain used to read before Khabarnama a 5 minutes chant. Jawaban Narz hai or something. It was very popular over there too. So I used to carry that, especially carry that. When I was approached by, when I came out of the studios, I was approached by a military officer, I think he was a brigadier, and he said, Siddiqui, this is the last podcast and we will be leaving soon. As you have seen that in Paltan Maidan, a document has been signed, we are withdrawing. We have been assigned a space where we will go back. So thank you very much, and you have done a great job, etc. But you don't come tomorrow. Just let me know how to destroy this broadcasting unit. And I was pretty surprised that they wanted to, but then it was the SOP of a war situation and they had to do that. Anyway, so when that was done and when I was leaving, he gave me a revolver and a box of bullets. And I said, what do you want me to do with this? I said, you don't know when in life you face a situation where you will think that how do I handle this, and this may come handy. So I just took it from him, and I know that I'm not going to use it. But I left the radio station, went home, and there was a pond near my home. I just threw that pistol and the box in that pond and went home.
Well, it's a very good question, a very emotional question. Immediately after the explosion, the first reaction came from an ER in engine room person. His name was Shafic, late Shafic, who left and he was very quick. He left his duty, came to the house room and told me, congratulations, Captain Saab. And my immediate reaction was, thank you, and I used a big fertile language in Navy, which I can't repeat. I said, get back to your duty. So that is the reaction. I think it will be more human and a very factual thing, that a person who was not in the ops room, his emotions carried him immediately to the ops room near my periscope seat where I was sitting and congratulated me. And of course, we were all very happy that we sunk a ship. But as commanding officer, there is an added responsibility on your shoulders. Having sunk the ship, now I have to escape. And I'll be very honest that immediate reaction after my initial happiness, jubilation, success was, how do I get out? And on my shoulder, lie the responsibility of saving the submarine and my crew. This is the major action. And this is what I face next 3 days. Next 3 days, they knew my rough position, they knew my rough direction. They had dropped about 156 depth charges, some near far, some far. But you imagine in calm sea, you are underwater, and even a depth charge falling few hundred yards or meters as we call it, it shakes you. During these 3 days, submarine is a tough life. We don't cook and we don't eat, we save a battery. We save oxygen. People don't realize, they think it's all, I don't know, pothole, we see the fish, this, that, nothing of that sort. Submarine is a very tough life. In these 3 days, we absolutely shut down our galley, what we call kitchen, so we save our battery. We don't, to fight, we shut down air condition off and on so that we don't use our battery. We ask people not working to lie down in their bunks with minimum physical activity so that they don't consume the oxygen. Because I'm in a closed place, and if people do a lot of activity, then the CO2 comes. So what do I do when oxygen becomes less and carbon dioxide more? I don't want to use my emergency oxygen, so we take care of all these things. So no food, no movement, minimum equipment. We rig submarine for quiet, minimum machinery so that we save our battery and also maintain our minimum oxygen. And that is the way it is. And I would be fair in saying at 36 to 48 hours, I don't think anybody took any meal or thing like that, just a small snack whenever it was possible to survive. And we were actually trying to get out of it.